I just so much believe that there come times, not just in our later years, but in growing up, where we get stuck or we're unhappy, or I talk about a slumbering spirit. If a person did experience abuse and the healing isn't there, they're still operating out of the trauma. They don't know it, but they're not fully awakened. And you can take a look at different choices that they're making. I get her. I get her. I have been her.
Dr. Peggy Pugh has a very difficult story and a wonderful story. I think we might call it bittersweet. A rough start, a lot of trauma, many interruptions, and a very exciting, fun love story. She also has a podcast, and I'm so glad she said yes. I'm so glad that she shared her story, because even though I've done so much of my own work, her story touched my heart. And it just shows how important our story is, how important it is that we document some way, somehow, what we know, whether it's with a podcast, a book, or even just on your phone. My motto, push record. If you want more information, go to www.coachlaurie.com.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Laurie.
Welcome, Dr. Peggy Pugh.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie. Good to be here.
I noticed on your webpage, what really stuck out to me is there's so many things you do, and I want you to tell us all about it. You have a group for, it's empowering women. It's called Empower Her.
Yes.
And tell us all about your ministry.
My ministry. So my ministry is prayer and healing and deliverance, inner healing, faith-based inner healing. And it's been that for 50 some years. I was telling a person the other day, just that for 50 some years. She said, no, that's not possible. And I said, yeah, I have a 52-year-old son. And she said, what? I said, I'm 72. He said, that's not possible. I said, trust me, if you had time, you would understand how it really is possible. I work with anyone that needs any kind of healing, any kind of faith-based inner healing. But my focus is on women. My focus is on women who aren't walking as fully as they'd like to walk in their life. They know that they're doing some things well, but in some areas, she's kind of like, this is not going well. And so I don't know why it's not going well. I'll give you an example of that. One of the courses that I'm teaching right now, it's how to get out of debt God's way. A woman contacted me, and she was an entrepreneur. My business isn't growing. And I said, what do you mean it's not growing? I'm just not making money. And I said, do you have any ideas as to why that may be? She said, no, I absolutely don't. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. When you were growing up within your family, how was money talked about? I don't mean your parents sat you down at the table, but just from what you heard as a child, what did you learn? She said, I hated the discussions because there were always arguments. And I said, based on that, what kind of inner vow do you think you made, even as a child? Consciously or not consciously. She said, oh, I can tell you that. I said that I'll never argue about money. I said, now I want to go to your business. Do you negotiate contracts? I can't stand it. I said, could it be the reason why you can't stand it is because in your heart and what you're hearing is an argument as opposed to negotiation? She said, I never thought about that. And I said, I know. That's how God uses me, is to bring out those things that can be fixed. Let's take a look at what's working well in your life and some areas where you want to walk more fully in that. I do that one-on-one with women. I'll do it in groups with women. I also have a practitioner certificate that if you're already a counselor in some way, but you want to add inner healing principles and skills to that, I'll certify you to be able to do that. The other thing that I do is I'm an author. I have written, they're not all in my bookstore, but I've written about 32 books. All of my writing is around healing. I had written one book, and the title of it is How to Bring Healing to the Broken Hearts of African Americans. And Dr. Martin Luther King's niece, Alveda King, is a friend of mine, and she wrote the foreword to that. So my whole life is around being able to help people take a look at where are you stuck, what's gotten in the way, and let's get to the root of it. A lot of times we can have some idea about where life went wrong or where we were interrupted, but sometimes it began even before when you think it began. And I love doing motivational and inspirational speaking, whether it be virtually or whether it be in person. So at this point in time in my life, I am just focusing on, okay, who is out there that maybe I could help serve so that she can walk more fully into who she is.
There's so many things about what you've just said that touch my heart. First of all, that you're in your 70s and you're still doing this amazing work, that we don't ever have to just stop.
No, but that's not been easy for me because I don't know very many women my age who are still doing this work. And I even went through a process of why am I still doing it? And one of the things that I said to God, I said, I have so much in me that I want to empty out before you take me home. That's what really propels me to keep going. I enjoy it. I absolutely enjoy it. But I've had people say to me, girl, why don't you just sit down? My husband is 85 years old. I'm 72, he's 85. Guess how long we've been married?
Let's see, you're 72. How about 55, 65?
No.
Just 5 years?
5 years.
Okay. I remember seeing that, and that was something else I loved because I'm in my 60s. I've been single for 20 years, and I
Okay.
sort of in my mind was like, this is the way it'll be forever. But tell us about that. I love it.
It is a whole testimony. We are in the process of writing a book and looking at going on the Steve Harvey show, any of the talk shows that will have us. Yeah, because it's really interesting. He found me on a dating site, but it's how we ended up getting together that is just absolutely phenomenal.
I love a good love story.
All right. So, what I'm about to tell you is not because I knew it then, but it's the story and how it happened. So, my son owns his own business and it's barbecuing and he has his own barbecue sauce. So, one day, Ken's youngest daughter, now I have to tell you, Ken from his first marriage had 5 girls and 1 boy. The second woman he married had 6 girls. So, he raised 11 girls and 1 boy. Phenomenal, just phenomenal. Really, we'll have to do tea over this. So, anyway, his youngest girl went to a store in the neighborhood, and my son was doing a food demonstration. And she said, "Oh, Corey, I want some of your brisket." He said, "Fine, I'll bring it next Tuesday." She said, "Well, come to my dad's house. I'm having kidney surgery, and he's going to help take care of me." She gave him the address. That was on a Thursday. So on Monday, the Monday before the Tuesday, Ken goes to his daughter. Ken was married 45 years and his wife died. So he went to his daughter and said, "I think I'm ready to start dating. And this is a pretty woman. I think I would like to date her." And his daughter said, "Dad, I know her." And he said, "How?" And he said, "She and I are Facebook friends." And he said, "What?" And she said, "Tomorrow, her son is on the way here to bring me some barbecue." He said, "What?" My son gets there. Then Ken goes up to Corey and says, "Excuse me, is this a picture of your mom?" And he said, "Where did you get that from?" And he said, "Well, is this a picture of your mom or is someone catfishing me?" He said, "No, that's my mother." Ken said, "I got it off a dating site." And he said, my son's mouth just dropped. I didn't want anybody to know I was on a dating site, right? Oh, my Lord, my Lord, my Lord. So he said, Corey's bristled his back and his voice got real deep. And Ken said, "Do you mind if I date her?" And he said, "Well, you're both adults. Do what you want to." But this is in December, but she's leaving in February for Africa and she's going to live. I'm a missionary to East Africa. And that was what I was going to do. King contacts me, we have coffee. And I said, your name, there's something about your name that's familiar to me, but it's not based on anything that you've told me. Is there any other work you've done? He was a pro officer. And he said, yeah, I used to run a group home in St. Paul. I said, what was the name of the group home? He said, Directions for Youth. I said, I was a group home parent at Directions for Youth. His phone rings. It's one of his daughters that says, Dad, I know Miss Peggy. He hands me the phone. She said, Miss Peggy, you don't remember me and my dad? He interviewed you. He gave you a tour of the house. He hired you. You didn't want to stay the first 2 nights by yourself. Your husband wasn't available. My dad had me stay with you. Neither of us remember the interview. Neither one of us remember him hiring me at all. I thought, oh my word. So we're talking, and his oldest daughter used to be my beautician, come to find out. Another daughter I led to the Lord, and she was my daughter's beautician, but we just didn't know this man. We're talking about this is unbelievable. So he shows me a picture of a house where he used to live. And I said, next door to that house, isn't there a pink and brown duplex? And he said, yes. I said, I used to live there. He said, when? I said, I moved in 1974. We moved in 1974. We were neighbors and never met each other. So we decided to go on a second date, but he hadn't dated in 45 years. Oh, no, let me go back. I asked him, would you ever think about getting married again? He said, I don't think so. And he asked me, and I said, no, I don't think so. And I said, but if I ever got married, home would have to be the safe place to land. He puts his hands out and he said, put your hands in my hands. He said, as soon as my hands touched his, he felt just lightning go through his body. I didn't feel anything. And his next words were, I believe I can provide you that soft place to land. I wasn't thinking about marriage, though. I really wasn't thinking about anything. And I thought that's really nice. So he said, I'd like to go on a second date with you, but how do you feel dating a 79-year-old man, soon to be 80? I said, I have no problems with that whatsoever. Date ends. Now we're on the second date. And I said, I thought about it. I said, you haven't dated in 45 years, which is really about 50,000 years. And I said, so you don't even know the type of woman that you like. I want to suggest you date other women. Now, I knew something changed in the atmosphere, but his whole countenance dropped, and I didn't know that. What he heard was, I'm letting you down easily. You can see other women. I meant exactly this. So many men can see a woman and lie and say he's not seen another woman. I'm saying, don't lie. It's okay for me. This chivalrous man who would open the door, and when the date was over and it was blustery outside, he didn't open the door. I slid to my car by myself. And I thought, well, what's wrong with this man? What happened on this date? And so I texted him. He was on his way to go to a cruise. And I said, would you bring me back some seashells? And he texted back and said, of course I would. And for him, it was like, oh, I'll have another chance. He comes back from the cruise. We're on our third date. Chinese is our favorite food. After dinner, he says, what about you come over to my house for a cup of coffee? I only live 10 minutes from here. I said, I only live 10 minutes from here. And again, we had never met. I get in my car, Laurie. I'm following this man. I said, Peggy, you've lost your mind. He could be a serial killer. He could be, you don't even know where you don't know his address. So yet, I'm still going. Get to his house, get out of the car. He listens well. I'm a romantic person. I love dimly lit places. His home was dimly lit a candle. And he said, stand right here, don't move. He said, Lexa. I said, oh my God, this man is into menage a trois. I'm a minister, Peggy, get up out of there, girl. And so he says, oh, I'll be right back. And he goes down the hall. And I said, he's going to get her. How? Peggy, leave. He comes back with an iPad and he said, Alexa isn't working today. I didn't hear Alexa. I just heard Lexa. And he said, I want to play this song and I want us to stand here and hold one another. And the title of the song was, I Just Want to Be Close to You, Girl by the Commodores. And after that, he said, I need to let you know when you get back from Africa, I'm going to ask you to marry me. I went to Africa. It was during the pandemic. I had to come back home in March. We got married May 2nd in the pandemic of 2020.
Wow.
That's an amazing story. Did you have to have a small wedding because of the pandemic?
Now, think about this. We're girls. We know how women can like a color, not like a color. And we could only have our witnesses and our pastors. So there were only six of us, which ended up being kind of a blessing because we didn't have to go through all the what color, what dress, what. Yeah, it was great. And it was our pastor's anniversary. We didn't know it, but he married us on his anniversary.
That is such a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing.
I love telling it, and he and I love telling it together. It's wonderful.
It feels like so much of what you do brings hope, and this story also brings hope because the people that I work with typically are a little older. And the reason is because women my age and older, we were sort of silenced. We didn't get to share our story if there was abuse. What I hear you saying and what I love about what you do is often, like I just saw a Facebook Live today, and somebody was saying that they were crying and they were saying that something they were struggling with. And immediately I thought, I wonder what their childhood trauma was. Not that I go there with everyone, but so
Sure.
often we are these grown adults, we're in our 50s and 60s, and I hear us say this, I'm doing all the things and I'm not getting the results. And what you're saying is, yeah, that's because you have hidden trauma.
Exactly. A lot of times we try to figure out by ourselves what's wrong with me because of our age or our generation, but even in the next generation, it's keep your head down, keep plowing ahead. And here we are now coming to kind of twilight years where we can relax and sort of, and we find ourselves saying, what have I done with my life? And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I've never been happy, or I've never done the kind of things I wanted to do. I've done things other people have told me. There has to come a point in time in our lives where we assess us, we take a look at us and say, where am I doing okay? And where am I not doing okay? And I want to get better now. I don't want to keep putting this off. There's still, unfortunately, shame and guilt around counseling. I was a secular counselor and therapist for 14 years before I went into inner healing. I just so much believe that there come times, not just in our later years, but in growing up, where we get stuck or we're unhappy, or I talk about a slumbering spirit. If a person did experience abuse and the healing isn't there, they're still operating out of the trauma. They don't know it, but they're not fully awakened. And you can take a look at different choices that they're making. I get her. I get her. I have been her.
I have another podcast. It's called No Longer Ashamed. And it
Mm.
was birthed out of somebody who I wanted to have a podcast. I thought he was going to do it on music or mountain biking. He's one of my dearest friend's husband. And he said, no, I have to talk about male sexual abuse as children because nobody's talking about it. And I'm like, why would you choose that? And I say that in a way jokingly, but also because it's a hard topic. And I agreed to be his co host on it. And what we have discovered is when people, first of all, most people, and men especially, takes 26 years to tell their story. Why? Because
Yes.
they were never allowed to, and there's so much shame. And so we look at these people that are stuck in their life and they don't even understand it's the abuse they suffered. And we had this one kid reach out to us to tell his story, and he was 20, maybe 23. We were so excited and so proud of him. And he wasn't ready to tell his family, but yet he's on this podcast. And I just said to him, I said, listen, you are young, you're telling your story now. You're going to get that healing if you get help and you get on this path because you're going to skip a lot of what all of us who weren't allowed to tell the story. We had to buck up, pull up our bootstrap. What do you say? Buck up and get going. The fact that we can come to someone like you and you can be so loving and patient and say, you know, you may be 60, but let's go back and
Mhm.
see what trauma you suffered.
Exactly, exactly. So that's why I was so captivated by the title of your podcast, because there is a scripture in Galatians 5 and 7 that says, you are running the race well. What happened? Basically, who interrupted you? because it wasn't me that would tell you to stop. And that's what we need to take a look at. What happened? You were running well, but my response to my interruption for your podcast is the opposite of what most people would say. My interruption began before I was even born. My interruption began in my mother's womb. I almost died, and she almost died. The cord, when I finally came to the birth canal, was wrapped around my neck, and they told her right before that, you're going to have to make a choice. It's either going to have to be you or your child, or your husband has to make the choice. It's either got to be you or your child. So before I even came into this world, I had suffered trauma. Isn't that interesting? Now we call it utero, UTERO, encounter, that things can happen in the womb, and how a child comes through that birth canal has a lot to do with how they'll live. And we know that a child's basic personality is developed by the time they're 6 and 7. So if trauma happened before that age and there was no healing, they become a traumatized teenager, a traumatized young adult, a traumatized wife. For me, the question became, yes, that was my interruption. When was my healing? When did the healing start?
When did you recognize it and when did the healing come about?
Oh my gosh, my gosh, my gosh. At age 22, when I had a stroke. At 22 years old, I was finishing my master's. I was married. I had 2 children. I was a full-time social worker. I owned my own business and I was on 6 different boards of directors. Why was I living like that? Who in the world does that? Yeah, see, I grew up in this home, remember, in the womb, came out. My father was a rageaholic and an alcoholic. He was the head of the Black Mafia in the Twin Cities. He was a Freemason. We lived in a very lavish environment, but I tell people once that door is closed, I don't care what the outside looks like. If all hell is breaking loose on the inside, all hell is breaking loose. One day at 10 years old, watching my mother slide down the wall after he beat her head against the wall, and blood was on the wall, and I made a vow, an inner vow, 10 years old, but I didn't know that terminology. I said, I'll never let a man tell me what to do. I'll never let a man hit me. No man better ever act like dot, 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 dot. Well, I operated out of that then, and I did not even think about God as a man because I was angry at him. If you can do all of this, why couldn't you stop him? At 3 years old, my father started sexually abusing me. At 4 years old, he started bringing men to the house to sexually abuse me. So you would have to ask, where was my mother? My mother was down the hall, but she couldn't help herself. So how was she going to help me? I stuffed it and I stuffed it and I swallowed it. For me, being the typical middle child, I was going to do everything to prove my father wrong. Then my father commits suicide. Now, how can I prove him wrong? But because of the messages in my head, I didn't stop. I kept going on and kept going on. And I knew something was wrong with my body. I knew that something was wrong with my left arm and my left leg, but I couldn't stop because I had to prove him wrong. Because he told me 4 things about myself. Peggy, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ugly, and you'll never amount to anything. So I tried to overcompensate and be the best, the brightest, the quickest, the fastest. And at 22, I remember trying to park my car in an underground garage, and my head was to the right, trying to look and see. And I snapped it back around, and my whole left side shut down. And I said, I need help. I've got to go up. I've got to get on an elevator and then go up some steps. Nobody knows I'm down here. And so I pulled myself to the elevator. I get up to the floor. And as soon as I cross over, I throw up and I pass out. And I remember being in the ambulance and I said, God, you know, love me enough to knock me down, but not knock me out. I didn't know how to stop. It wasn't just that I did not know in my mind how to stop, in my body how to stop. The blessing was it wasn't debilitating. But I was a therapist at the time. I end up in therapy. And the therapist said, after she listened to my life, she said, "Oh, Peggy, it's clear what your problem is. It's just a two-letter word." And I'm like, two-letter word? What in the world? And she said, "Peggy, you don't ever say no." I said, "I can't say no." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Because my father said I won't be anything. And if somebody calls me to do something and I say no, they'll think I'm not worth it." Those are the lies we tell ourselves. We don't just tell ourselves, we live the lies. I lived the lie. And I could not find enough reasoning to slow down. I couldn't find enough reasoning to be still. And all I wanted to do, and this may sound crazy, but it's what I went through. I thought if I can have a car accident, not hurting anyone, not killing myself, I'll at least be in the hospital bed and I can slow down. Think about that. The only way that I could think that I could be okay to be still and to rest was to end up in the hospital. My therapist said, "Peggy, from now on, every session, all I'm going to do is have the telephone ring. You're going to answer it, and somebody's going to ask you to do something, and you have to say no." Laurie, how many sessions do you think it took me before I could do that? It took six. And when I said no, I cried and I cried. I said, "They're just not going to want me." She said, "That's the lie you've believed." She said, "They keep calling you, right?" And she said, "Instead of saying no, what about if you say, 'Right now, my plate is kind of full, but can we touch bases again in another 2 months or 3 months?' Give yourself time." Okay, I did that. Had another stroke at 40. And it was then that I said, "Whatever I have to do to heal, because I'm not going to be the reason why I die prematurely." So I started counseling when I was in my 20s and then went back again in my 40s. And I say, broken people break people and healers heal people. I can't do any healing with anybody beyond my own healing. I can't do any deliverance with anyone beyond my own. I had to take a look at my issues, which was not easy because I had to admit I wasn't perfect. I had to admit that it was okay to be still. I had to admit that a lot of times I was really tired, but I didn't want to let anyone know that. My interruption began at birth inside the womb. My healing began at age 23 for about a year, and then again at age 40.
What it makes me think of is you do this first bout of healing at 20. You get enough to be able to keep going. And then, like where you say, you knocked me down, but you didn't knock me out. So, what was the power of that second round? Because we know we don't go back to the same thing. It's circular, so it's a different level. It's a little bit deeper than the work you did before.
Because of the age, I had more life experience. I could go back and look at things that I didn't look at in my 20s. Because in my 20s, yes, I was in the process of being healed to be able to move on. Now I'm in my 40s. That means I'm close to 50. I want to be healthy as I can be. None of us is perfect. I'm not perfect. There's always going to be something in our lives we may have to work on, but it doesn't always have to be that deep. For me in my 40s, I took a look at how did I get here after I had been there? What lessons did I not learn? And here's what the lesson was. I was more concerned about making sure everyone else was okay. I poured out and I poured out and I poured out, and I was depleted and felt like I was having a nervous breakdown. And I believe that there was an emotional breakdown that did happen for 3 days. I didn't know that I could grieve so hard for so long until there's no tears left. And that's when I decided I've got to love me. I cannot keep looking for a man to feel okay, looking at a man to make me feel okay. I can't look at my children hoping they'll make me feel okay. I've got to see that I'm worthy enough. And I just did not feel that. I did some deep work. I went on a couple of silent retreats. I did journaling for the first time. We never know what or who is going to come into our life to bring healing. When I was a little girl and I couldn't go anyplace, we to go outside, we had to play right in front of the house. Eating became my mother's joy for us. My father would lock us in the basement. She'd have to break into the refrigerator. And I'm telling you, we're living in this mini mansion. So eating for me became an issue. It had always been an issue. I found comfort in nothing else, and that's false comfort. And that's when I decided to take a look at, what am I doing to myself? I know things that happened to me, but is there something I don't remember that I've buried? And if it has been buried, please bring it up so the root can be pulled up. And one of the things that I had buried was that when I was 10 years old, remember that inner vow that I made? I also was a Girl Scout. That's the only thing that our father allowed us to do, was to go be a brownie or go to Girl Scouts. I sold 50 boxes of cookies and was so excited. My father made me eat every cookie that people had paid for. I'm trying not to cry. It was horrific. It was a horrific life, but I've done the work and I'll keep doing the work until I have to stop doing the work. I say, when you need to do the work, give yourself that time. I'm good right now. I'm very good right now. I'm experiencing love like I've never had love before. I never knew the love of a man. I never knew that I just didn't have to keep doing things by myself. If you would ask Kenny, and someday maybe you get to meet him, and you ask him why he's in my life, he'll say, because you're not to worry about anything but your ministry. I'll handle everything else. I'm 72. I did not begin experiencing that till 5 years ago. And I'm grateful I get to experience it and tell other women, so can you. He may find you, maybe not the same way Kenny found me. You may find each other, I don't know how, but don't give up. But this is what I do say to women that are looking for a good man. There's 3 steps. One, be still. Two, be healed. And three, quit looking, because he's supposed to find you. If he hasn't found you yet, maybe there's work that he's going through. There is going to be this meeting, I believe, that is going to happen if he's obedient to taking care of himself and you taking care of yourself. I've broken, in marrying Kenny, I've broken generational curses off my life, off the maternal side of my family, of women choosing the wrong men. That's huge. This journey of life, there can be physical interruptions, there can be spiritual, there can be financial interruptions, but it's okay to take care of yourself. It was okay for me to say, I'm worth it, but I couldn't have someone else tell me I was worth it. I had to tell myself and know it. And not only that, to quit doing things I didn't like to do. I was doing things out of should. You know, Peggy, you're really bright, you're really anointed, you should do this. And I thought, if I'm not happy, I'm not giving it my all anyway. You're not able to receive all of who I am. When I realized what the call was on my life, I am a speaker, I am a teacher, a trainer, and a minister. And that's my judge. Those are my lanes. I'm an author. I stay in those lanes and I'm doing well. I've tried to work for someone else. I've been an entrepreneur for since 1984. It's not easy, as you well know, it's not easy. And there were some years I just had to just let that go for a while. But I enjoy my life. I love my life. Most importantly, Laurie, I love me. And I knew that when I dealt with the weight around my heart, the weight of my body would begin coming off. I've lost large sums of weight over many, many years. This time it's different. It's not the losing that's the problem, it's the keeping it off. And I'm keeping it off. I've lost 15 pounds without thinking about it, without worrying about it. For me, it was about portion control, and I needed to move more physically. So I'm doing that, and I'll keep taking care of me that way.
Thank you for being so honest and candid. And it's touched my heart because sometimes I see these younger women who are kind of figuring it out. They've already figured out trauma. But women our age, we didn't have that opportunity. I love that here you are, a woman that can not only listen because you're compassionate, but you have the training, the ability to help us heal. Because what I know through my life is we can kind of get okay, we can get a new message, but until that deep core of healing, of being able to look in the mirror, say, I love you, whatever it is, that until we can truly love ourselves, we're not going to be able to live that freedom life. Talk to us about how you can help somebody get there.
I can help male or female. I'm very concerned about what's available for men because he hurts too. Many of him hurt too. But I can help you get to the root of the trauma. You may know the trauma, but that may not be the root of the trauma. Something may have happened before the trauma began. I can help you then walk through that because it hurts to hurt. It's not going to be easy to bring that up, but you have to in order to get to the other side. I am a compassionate listener and a compassionate person. I may weep right along with you in terms of that, but I also can give you hope. I'm a living witness that it can be all right. It may come in ages and stages, but that hope, and it doesn't matter if you're 22, 52, 72, or 82, if you still are not walking in the fullness of what you want to walk in your life, I know because of the call on my life, because of the years I've been doing this, that I can help you take a look at what that would look like and that you have the right to be in that place and how you can walk that thing out so that you can have joy. I think that there are too many of us leaving this earth without experiencing joy. And I truly, truly believe that having an abundant life is something we can have here. My mother left this earth thinking she was only going to be happy in heaven. And I'm like, no. I mean, yes, I expect to be happy there too. But I'm here right now. So I can help any male, any female that is saying, you know what, I want to be able to talk about things. And I used to have a sexual assault service just for particularly Black women because they weren't getting through the system fairly.
Wow, this is so powerful. And we all deserve to have joy. And one of the things we've discovered in our other podcast is a lot of times when people have sexual abuse, they don't think they deserve because they think you don't know. They still that little child that thinks somehow, some way it's their fault.
It's their fault. And I deal with a lot of women who feel that way and or they told someone and the response back was, shut up, don't you ever say anything like that again. Or you're just making that up in your mind. So now you've got double trauma. It took a lot for me to say it. And now you're telling me I'm lying. Now you're telling me I have to shut up, which gives the perpetrator continued access to me because you don't believe it. I've also dealt with moms who weren't sexually abused, but their children were. And she didn't handle that maybe the best way she wanted to. It's such a shock to your system because we're protectors. We can't be with our children 24/7. So sometimes that's the woman that I'm working with is the mom who feels guilty and feels ashamed. So she cannot connect well with her daughter or with her children, that bond. Or mothers that have had abortion and they're having difficult time connecting. I had an abortion when I was 17 years old. Just stuff that, didn't think about that until one day my son, I have a son and a daughter, my son comes home from school and he's a senior in high school and he was going to be a social worker. And he said, Mom, don't you talk about birth order when you do your counseling? I said, yeah. He said, well, a psychologist came and was talking about birth order. And when he described the behavior of the oldest child, that wasn't me. But when he described the behavior of the middle child, It's exactly who I am. And he said, Mama, how could that happen? And to have to tell your child that for whatever reason, you made the decision to not let his brother or sister live is hard. But the next question was harder. Well, Mama, did you want me? I've had to get counseling and inner healing through all of that. Yeah. Yeah. So there's nothing that a woman, nothing that a man could go through. I've had to do counseling with people. The old terminology was multiple personalities, and now it's DID, who had to dissociate because of the trauma. What I love is, although your life could have been harder than mine, maybe your life was easier than mine, but it was hard in this area. It's not about how difficult or how less difficult. It was, let's get you through this thing so that you can be who you want to be, what you want to be, where you want to be, when you want to be.
Wow, this has been so amazing. Before we go, where can people find you?
My website, which is www.dr, just drpeggypugh.com. But the title of my podcast is called It's Time to Shift. It's time to shift. Yeah.
Peggy, this has been, man, we have covered a lot. I've been kind of in tears through a lot of it. Before we go, what is it you really want us to know?
You can be healed, that you can have a happier life, that you can be more satisfied about who you are and where you are. I want your listeners to know that they can plan what and where they want to be. Life doesn't just have to always just happen for them. I made it and I'm making it, and you can make it too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Laurie.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.